Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Crypto Watch. Good evening, everyone. Happy Sunday. Hope everyone's enjoying the Sunday so far. And for all those of you who are mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. Right. So today we are going to talk about something very recent, right? Something that just was announced last week, and that is none other than the Fed, right? The Fed has actually raised its interest rate, right, last week, and if we actually look back, right, it is the biggest interest rate hike in 22 years, right? So it is quite a significant news, right? And before that, there was a lot of hype, right? There was a lot of talk on this interest rate, right? Some people were thinking that it might be, it might be, they might be hiking more than what they expect, right? But eventually, right, it turned out to be pretty much expected, right? But with this development, right, how would that actually impact, right, your stock and crypto holdings, right? So for stocks, I mean like US stocks, right, and crypto, be it the alternate coins or your Bitcoin, right? So this is something that you might be interested in, right, for tonight. And of course, what's next to look out for, right, with this particular development, right? What is there, in store, right, with this interest rate hike, right? But before I proceed further, right, if you are here live with me, right, as always, right, do give this video a like, right, so that I know that you are here live with me. All right. And before I delve into the topic proper, right, once again, let me give a quick introduction about myself, right, for those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, right, I'm the trade engineer, TTE for short. And I have 6 to 7 years of trading experience, traded numerous instruments such as stocks, futures, forex, and cryptocurrency. Right, and help numerous aspiring traders unlock their best trade and unleash their trading potential within them. All this using some simple yet effective techniques. Also, right, before I start the session proper, some disclaimers down here, right? The work accuracy information is ensured as far as possible, right? No responsibility taken on my side for any loss of inconvenience. Yep. Ideas presented here, right, are just for reference and educational purposes only. Today's presentation is also not intended in any way to give trading advice or recommendations to buy or sell. And me, the trade engineer, should not have any liability or any loss or expense whatsoever. All copyrights reserved. Now, with that out of the way, right, let's delve into the topic proper, right? What is the impact of the Fed on US stocks and, Bitcoin? Right, so let's look at some recent articles, right, for this interest rate hike, right? So this is taken, from Forbes, right? Let me hide the banner, right? So it's taken from Forbes, right, .com, right? And what it mentioned here, right, is published very recently on the 4th of May. In fact, what it mentioned here is authorized the biggest interest rate hike in 22 years, right? And the primary reason is to fight inflation, right? As we all know, inflation is pretty high right now. Right, so this is part of the monetary stimulus, right? That's what is mentioned here, right? In the bid to fight the highest inflation rate in actually 40 years, right? But this might actually have some implications on economic growth, right? As I mentioned last week as well. Right, and there are other key details from this particular article, right? So what is the interest rate hike? How many basis points did they actually increase? Right. So what they actually increased, right, is actually a 50 basis point increase, right? So this was widely expected, right? And we do have to bear in mind that they did increase by 25 basis point, right, on sometime earlier in March, right? So that was just a few months ago. Right, so this increase, right, is actually the largest since May 2000, right? It basically to tackle the inflation, right? And the Fed chair, right, Jerome Powell, right, actually also mentioned, right, that he pledged to move expeditiously, right, to restore price stability, right, to put the inflation in check. Right, and this has been the talk, of the town, very for many weeks now, right? And there were some expectations, right, for some increase, right, for the pace and intensity of future hikes to be more aggressive, right, to tackle this strong inflation rate, right? And that also that concern, right, that the central bank actually waited too long, right, to actually start raising interest rates. Right, and it also mentions here, right, that the Fed has announced, right, it has, started to reduce the size of its balance sheet, right, from this month, right, actually not this month, but in June the 1st, it will be reducing as much as 47.5 billion, right, dollars, and when it reaches September, right, about 95 billion. So it's going to, help its balance sheet. So let's take a look, right, with this announcement last week, right, last Wednesday, right, what has happened, to the market, right? So over here, right, we have two charts, right? We have the S&P 500 as well as the Dow Jones, industrial average, right? So these two are key stock indexes, right, measuring, the performance of the US stock. So the announcement, right, was on 4th of May, right? I saw an article, right, on Wednesday last week, right? And you can see, right on that day where it announced the interest rate hike, right? You see that there was a very green bar, right, for the S&P 500. Likewise for the Dow Jones, right? We also saw a very green bar, right? And if we look at the details, right, S&P 500 actually was up 3%, right, about 125 points. And Dow Jones is also up about 3% on that particular day, right, at about 935 points, right? So these are spectacular increases, right? It is quite a huge gain, right, for a particular day. And I'm sure all of you will be curious, right? Why did it actually gain so much, right, on one particular day, right? Just when they announced the interest rate hike. Let's look at other news, right, that to try to explain this phenomenon, right? So this is taken from investing.com, right? On the why it actually jumped, right? Why the S&P 500 actually jumped up, right? So basically, right, it was because the interest rate hike was not as aggressive as what it was expected, right? So in fact, the Fed chairman, right, Jerome Powell, right, actually cooled fears of a more aggressive rate hike. Right, and treasury yields actually dropped, right, because the Fed said that it wasn't considering a 25 basis point hike, right, so only a 50 basis point hike, right. So that is something that helped to cool the sentiment, like cool the expectations that we might be seeing further interest rate hike or more aggressive interest rate hike down the road, right. So it was widely expected, right. It wasn't higher than expected. So the market corrected itself on that day. Right, and this is another article, right, to explain the Dow, and it's pretty similar, right? The reasons is also actually exactly the same, right? Basically because that the fears of more aggressive rate hike was cooled, right, and it wasn't considering that 25 basis point hike in the coming months. So this, was the reason, right, for a 3% increase on one particular day for both S&P 500 as well as the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Right, and let's look at Bitcoin, right? So what happened to Bitcoin as well, right? And, if we look at Bitcoin, it being the leader, right, of cryptocurrency, right, or being the highest market cap for cryptocurrency, it will lead the way, right, for all the other crypto coins. So similarly, right, on the 4th of May, right, 2022, on a Wednesday, right, the same day, we also saw that the green bar, right, for Bitcoin, right, it was quite a big green bar, right. In fact, we look at the details, right, it was up, 5.2%. Actually, in percentage term, it's even higher than the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones, right. And that is about, in terms of absolute value, right, it's 1970 US dollars increase, right. So it really popped, on that particular day. Now, why is that so, right? Bitcoin. So let's look at some articles as well for Bitcoin, right? This is taken from CNBC, right? So what you mentioned here, right, is that on that particular day, right, we saw Bitcoin jumping to 40,000, right? on the back of that interest rate hike, right? So in fact, the article mentioned here about 6% increase, right? And the reason was the same, right? It basically ruled out the possibility of a 75 basis point increase, right? So with that, Bitcoin actually climbed pretty high, right? It actually broke the 40,000 barrier, right? So in that sense, right, you can see that the stocks and cryptocurrency are correlated in some sense, right? Both the reasons are very similar to each other, right? We are both bullish for both crypto and equities, right? Right. So with the inflation at 40 years high, right, the market expected more aggressive tightening schedule, but it didn't turn out, right? The sentiment was cooled down on that day, right? And in particular, like I point out this particular point, right, which is Bitcoin remains highly correlated with stock market moves, right? So this is something that we have seen in recent times, right? We have seen in the past as well, right, that Bitcoin now more so than ever, right? More highly correlated with stock market, right? Stock equities, right? It didn't used to be a case, right? You recall before the pandemic, right? Bitcoin, is didn't really, has much correlation with the stock market, right? In fact, some people might think that, if I go into Bitcoin, I might be doing some risk diversification, right? But now, now times have changed, right? Ever since the pandemic has started, right, we see that Bitcoin is moving together with the stock market, right? More similarly, now more so than before. And if we look, at further details, right, of this correlation with stocks, right, we can see that there is some evidence, right, that there is stronger correlation with stocks, right. So this was a recent article, right, earlier this year on January the 11th, 2022, right. So in this article, it mentioned that before the pandemic, right, crypto, right, such as Bitcoin, Ether, right, showed very little correlation with major stock indices, right. All these just changed, right, after the bank crisis responses in early 2020, right. That's when the pandemic was at the height, right. So when we during that time, right, crypto prices as well as the US stocks both surged, right, because interest rate dropped, right, at that time. So there's easy global financial conditions and greater investor risk appetite. Right. So they did some calculations, right? And it could be seen that in 2017 and 2019, the correlation coefficient, right, between stocks and Bitcoin, right, was only a mere 0.01. Right. But this 0.01 actually increased to 0.36, right, between 2020 to 2021. Right. So that is quite strong evidence that to show that the correlation is getting stronger now, during this time more so than ever. And with that comes the chart, right? This is a chart of Bitcoin and as well as the S&P 500, right? So you can see the S&P 500 is in this dark blue line, right? The Bitcoin is in the light blue line, right? So you can see that previously in the past, Bitcoin went up, S&P 500, still was a gradual increase, right? It came down, the S&P 500 still, was, didn't really got perturbed, right? There was hardly any correlation. But, recently in this time, right, okay, there is quite a bit of fluctuation in the Bitcoin, right? But generally, you can see that, direction is very much similar, right? And if we look at that correlation, right, that was mentioned, right, it is even more clear cut, right? So basically, right, you can see that the higher the number here, right, then it implies the greater positive correlation, right, between Bitcoin and S&P 500. Right, so you can see that over this time, right, there was even some periods, right, but increasingly, right, ever since the pandemic started, you can see it's always positive, right, and always more so than before. Right. So that is something to take note of, right? There could be less risk diversification, right? Now, with the Bitcoin, following the stock market quite closely, right? So we do have to watch out for that as well. All right. Okay. So, yep. All right. And there is this stronger correlation suggesting that Bitcoin, right, has been acting as a risky asset, right? So, as what I pointed out, right, there could be limited risk diversification benefits, right, as what was initially perceived. Right. But what happened further after that, right? So let's look one day after that, right, on the 5th of May, on Thursday, right? And you can see, right, on the 5th of May, on Thursday, right, it actually dropped, right? So it was a huge U-turn, right, from the day, the previous day was up 3%, and the next day it dropped, tremendously. And you can see both of them was on very pretty red candles, right, for both the S&P 500 as well as the Dow Jones. Right, in fact, we look at the details, right, S&P 500 was down 3.4%, right, or 148 points, while the Dow Jones was down, 3.1% or 1,064 points, right, to be exact. Right, so that is, basically gave up all your gains, for the previous day. Now you might be thinking, why, right? I mean, one day you're so bullish, and the other day, the next day you became bearish, right? So isn't this like a joke, right? Is this like some scam or something like that, right? Let's look at some news, right? For what's what could be the reasons behind this. Right. So this is taken from investing.com as well, right? So what is mentioned here, right, is that the Dow actually shed 1,000 points, right? So why did it actually drop so tremendously? Right. Basically, right, it is a reactive effect, right? Because the treasury yields, right, actually clamped to multi-year highs, right? So it was a bit strange, right? Because it didn't climb the multi-year highs on that particular day, but it didn't climb after that one day after. In fact, the 10-year treasury yield, right, actually jumped to 3.1%, right? And that was the highest level, right, since 2018. Right. So even though there was there was some talk that the Fed might not be increasing so much in the future, right, for interest rates, but the 10-year treasury yield still jump to 3.1%, right, above 3%, right. So it was a bit unexpected in that sense, right? They didn't expect the treasury yield to actually cross 3%, right? And that's why, according to this particular analyst, right, he said it was a bit disconcerting, right, that rates haven't slowed. And, that's why the markets were reacting poorly to that. Right. And, another article, right, also for investing.com, right, also mentioned some other reasons, right? So basically, investor sentiment created in the face of concerns, right? The Fed interest rate hike the previous day would not be enough to tame surging inflation, right? So some people are thinking, oh, even though it is expected, right, it is not as aggressive as expected, right? But the inflation is still surging, right? So the Fed might still have to increase the interest rate, soon, right? So that also caused the Wall Street to actually tumble and raise all its gain, right? Right, and also for Bitcoin, right? Let's look at Bitcoin on the 5th of May, right? What happened to Bitcoin as well? And you can see, right, Bitcoin also fell, like a very red candle down here. Right? In fact, it actually fell more than it gained the previous day. And if we look at the details, right, about 7.9% down, and that's absolute value about 3,000 odd dollars, right, of US dollars, right? So that's a very big decrease for one particular day. Now, why is that so, right? So let's look at the details, right, for Bitcoin as well, right, for cryptocurrency. So this taken very recently on the 6th of May on investing.com from Daily Coin. So basically, right, it actually fell in tandem with the stock market, right? Same reason as why it rose the day before, right? It basically followed the direction of the stock market, right? So the stock market fell and Bitcoin also fell, right? It also erased the gains made from the previous day, right? And what we saw is it lost about 7.5%, right, in the span of 24 hours. And once again, this article also said that there is a positive correlation, right, with the stock market indices, right, since 2020, right. So more so than ever, right, is moving the same direction as the equities market, and it is acting as a less risky safe haven. Right, in fact, even mentioned here, right, that the correlation level with the S&P 500 is one of the largest in history, right? So that is something for us to take note of, right? If we are actually, have any crypto holdings. Right, so to consolidate or to summarize, right, what are some of the learning points we can get from this, right? First of all, right, you can see that, one day it was up tremendously, the other day it was down tremendously, right? So there is immense market volatility, right? That is something we have to take note of. And with that, right, we should actually trade or invest with caution, right? Don't chase the market. Like imagine that, if you saw that it was up, on Wednesday, right, and you actually entered a long position, right, on that particular day, and you might be, ruining your losses the very next day, right, because it was down tremendously just the next day, right? So we do have to trade with caution, right, and don't chase the prices, right? That is something very important for us to take note of. And two, right, stocks and Bitcoin are increasingly positively correlated, right? So we do have to take that note in mind, take that into consideration, right? So if the stock price drop, right, Bitcoin might also follow suit, right, and vice versa, right? So this, and with Bitcoin being the highest market cap, right, it might cascade also to other cryptocurrencies, right? Be it your Ethereum, your Litecoin, or other coins, in the cryptocurrency world, right? So you do have to take note, you do have to take this into consideration, right? If we are having any crypto holdings, right? So basically, right, there may not be any risk diversification, right, with stock and crypto holdings now, right? Stock and crypto holdings might have similar risks, right, in that they move in the same direction, right? But with that being said, right, what's next, right? What's next for US stock and Bitcoin, right, with this development? And before I delve into details, right, once again, if you're finding value in my sharing so far, right, don't forget to hit that like or love button, right, if you enjoy my sharing so far. Right, and without further ado, right, I will first delve into the S&P 500, right, to give you a sense, right, of what is to come, right, for US stock market, right. But before I do so, right, let me give a quick recap, right, what I actually meant. If you haven't watched it, right, you can check out my past videos, right, where I'll delve into more details of my analysis for the S&P 500 during that week. Let's take a look at what I covered last week, right, to jog everyone's memory. So I mentioned the 6 things to watch out for, right, last week for the S&P 500. Right, the first of all was that first horizontal support down here, right, which was testing at that time, right. And if it actually breaks that first horizontal support, we might be looking at these two other support levels, right? And that downtrend line, right? You're still trading below this downtrend line, so it's still bearish in nature. First horizontal resistance, right? There's something to watch out for, right? If it bounces up. And the moving average, right? At the moment, at the time, right? It was the 50 SMA was still below the 200 SMA. And MACD was also negative as well, right? So that is also some bearish indication, whether it will continue to be so, right? Remains the question, right? So let's take a look at the S&P 500, right, with the past few trading days of the last week, right, and see where that brings us now, right? So first of all, right, we have that first horizontal support, right, that I mentioned in my video just now, right? So you can see that, it's the same level, right, at $4113 to $4114, right? It was the immediate support, right? It did try to go below, but eventually it closed above, right? So far you can see that the closing prices have stayed above this level of support, right? It threatened to break below this horizontal support, but eventually, it still closed above that horizontal support. And for the other horizontal support, right, it actually touched the second support, right, at about 4061 to 4063, right. In fact, that's the lowest price, right, that it touched about on 2nd May, right, on Monday, as well as 6th May, right. It was almost close to that level on 6th of May, right, on Friday, right, just very recently. So it appears that this level is still strongly supported, right? We do want to see that this price remains supported if there's any chance of it bouncing up, right? So we do keep an eye out for this particular level as well. Downtrend line, right? So the same downtrend line shown in the video last week. And the past few trading days didn't change that. It is still trading below this downtrend line for this particular week. First horizontal resistance, right, shown in the video as well, right? So same level, 4287 to 4292 US dollars, right? This is the immediate resistance, and it actually tested like on 4th of May, right? You can see on that very green candle, right? When the Fed actually announced the interest rate hike, right? It actually hit this level, right? And after that, it actually immediately retraced, right? So it was quite a strong resistance level, right, for now. The moving averages, right? So nothing changed for moving averages. 50 SMA is still less than a 200-day SMA, right? There is no confirmed reversal from the midterm yet. And the MACD, right? The MACD continued to be negative for this week, right? So the price, as what I mentioned, right? On Wednesday, it bounced up but could not sustain. It ended back down, right? So, but we do see that the gap is narrowing, right? This is a positive sign for the bullish side of things, right? If it eventually cross over, right, we could be seeing a reversal. Just to conclude, right, what happened this week, right? So we actually, accurately identified both the support and resistance, right? The first horizontal support was convincingly supported for closing prices, right? You can see that the closing price actually remains above, the first horizontal support, right? And the second horizontal support, basically was supported, in terms of the lowest prices, right? Lowest prices didn't cross, below the second horizontal support for the week, right? And we actually saw that that first horizontal resistance was resisted, right? So we actually could do a quick trade, right? For those of you who are traders out there, right? Could do a quick scalp trade, and you could have actually gained some money, right, in just one particular day on Wednesday, right, when the Fed actually announced the interest rate hike. It actually went from the support all the way to the first horizontal resistance, right, all in one day. And thereafter the price just retraced back down. So, right, if basically if you actually entered the long position, right, at that first horizontal support, when you saw water, right, and took profit, at that first horizontal resistance, that is about a 4.2% gain, right, or 173 points, and that actually happened all in one day. So you could make some quick profits, right, if you actually entered at that time. Yep, so it was pretty accurate analysis, right, from our last week call, right, or last week idea, right, trading idea. Right, but with that being said, like, what is the future, right, for S&P 500, right, all these in play? And once again, right, before we delve deeper, right, do give this video a like or a love, right, if you're enjoying the sharing so far. All right, and now let's go into the future analysis, right, for S&P 500. Yeah, you might want to take note of some of these pointers, right, if you are, holding some US stocks, you're not sure whether it might go up or go down, right? So first of all, right, let's look at that first horizontal support, right? That is that level that we're talking about just now, right? 4113 to 4114, right? And we did see that the closing prices was above this level, right, last week. So we do want to see that these closing prices can continue to remain above this level moving forward, right? If that happens, right, if that happens again, right, there could be strong support, right? And prices might bounce up, right? If not, we do have to watch for further downside to lower support levels. Right, and the second horizontal support, right, that is corresponding to this 4061 to $4063, right, as I mentioned just now. So it touched, on the 2 days, right, very recently, right, and we do want to see that the lowest price continue to remain above this level, right. If it does, right, similarly, right, it could imply that it's strongly supported, right, it convincingly supported, and there could be a bounce back up. If not, like we need to watch for further downside to lower support levels. If it actually breaks down, like the second horizontal support as well, like we could be looking at this third horizontal support, like it used to be the resistance over here, like quite some time ago. And this is corresponding to a level about 3981 to 3985 US dollars. Right. So this is something to watch out for, like if the price actually breaks down. Right, the downtrend line, right? So downtrend line, we are still trading below the downtrend line, right? So in order to see a new uptrend, like a new trend forming, right, we actually have to break above this downtrend line to form higher highs in prices, right? As for a moment, it's still currently trading below this line, right? We do need to see a convincing breakout of this downtrend line for there to be further upside, right? If not, it can just be this with a strong resistance level for the price to bounce back down, right? It will still be in this particular downtrend. Right, and the first horizontal resistance, right, same level as we mentioned just now, right? This is the same level we do need to watch out for, right? About 4287 to 4292 US dollars, right? It was tested on 4th of May, right? But it didn't clear it. Eventually, we traced back down. So eventually, if S&P 500 is able to move up, it has to break this resistance, right? At the moment, it doesn't seem like able to break it, right? But we do have to see whether this level will eventually be broken. Right, moving averages, right? So the moving averages, is still pretty bearish, right? 50 SMA is still below 200-day SMA, right? We do have to see whether this will actually cross eventually, right? If not, further downside might still remain, right, for S&P 500. And the MACD, right, it is still negative as well, so that's also bearish in nature, right? The gap is narrowing though, right, as I mentioned just now. So if this gap narrows and eventually cross over the positive region, right, there could be a reversal, right? And there could be some price recovery, right? If not, we could still be seeing further bearish momentum, right? So we do have to watch out for MACD as well. Right, that's a quick analysis, right, for US stocks, right? I hope you have gleaned something from this, right? But with that being said, right, what's next, right, for Bitcoin, right? We have covered US stocks, but we haven't quite covered Bitcoin in detail, right? So what's next for Bitcoin? Yep, but once again, right, if you're enjoying my sharing so far, right, do tap on that like or love button, right, so that I know that you're enjoying the sharing that I'm giving to you so far. Right, and now let's move on to Bitcoin, right? So for Bitcoin, right, we also talked at length, last week, and this was some of the key things, right, that we mentioned for Bitcoin, right? Particular 7 key things that we mentioned for Bitcoin last week, right? And if you haven't checked out already, right, do check it out, right? Do check my past videos for my past analysis, right, for Bitcoin, right? If you want the full video, you can follow me on my TikTok channel, right? Bitcoin, like we mentioned last week. Right, so on the daily chart, like we talk about this uptrend line, right? That was tested at that time, right? And in the first horizontal support, we was also testing this first horizontal support at that time, right? Right, and then we also mentioned other layers of support, right? If that first horizontal support actually breaks down, right, last week. Downtrend line, right, you're still trading below this downtrend line, right? Couldn't quite break it. The first horizontal resistance, you're still trading below this horizontal resistance. And we wanted to see whether it can actually break eventually. Yeah, and if we did last break, right, we could be looking at all these other resistance levels, right? And the MACD, right, it was slightly negative, right, and we weren't quite sure whether it would turn positive or not. So those were the key things, right, that we mentioned last week, right? And let's check out the past 7 days, right, what has happened for Bitcoin. So here's Bitcoin, right? Here's Bitcoin daily chart, right? With the updated prices, right? So let's go through the indicators one by one, right? So first of all, right, we have this uptrend line, right, the same uptrend line that was drawn, right, and this circled portion was this candle on the 1st of May, right, my last sharing last Sunday. So you can see that actually, on 1st of May, it actually bounced up, and 3rd of May, there was a red candle that came back down, right, and retested this uptrend line, right. On 4th of May, right, it also opened on that, uptrend line, right, and this green candle. But remember, 4th of May was the Wednesday, we announced the Fed interest rate hike, right? So it actually was it very bullish on that day, right? And it actually went all the way up and tested this downtrend line, right? It just basically just hit this downtrend line, right? But I couldn't quite clear it, right? And it corrected back down the next day on 5th of May. And in so doing, it actually went below this uptrend line, right? So once it went below, it was a very convincing breakdown of this uptrend line, right? You can see that after that, for subsequent days, it has traded below this uptrend line, right? So you can see that once there's a convincing breakdown of that uptrend line, right, there could be continued bearish momentum. Right, and the first horizontal support that we mentioned last week as well, right? Same level, 37,300 to 37,600, right? You can see that the same story, right? It was supported, right, from 1st to 4th of May, right, from Sunday to Wednesday, right? It was trading above this line, right? And on the 5th of May, it also broke down this level, right, together with the uptrend line, right? So similarly, right, it has been trading below this support level ever since. Right, and other layers of support, like other levels of support, right? There's it actually, on the 5th of May, right, this particular red candle, right, it immediately hit that second horizontal support, right? And the subsequent day on 6th of May, it actually opened below that second horizontal support. And very recently, right, just today, right, it is actually testing this level of support now, right? Third horizontal support, right? Exactly at this third horizontal support that was drawn last week. Right, and the downtrend line, right? So it is still trading below this downtrend line, right? In fact, what I want to point out is that this downtrend line was the was very important in the sense that it was the point of resistance, right? On Wednesday, right, on 4th of May, where it actually hit this level and it immediately retraced back down, right? So it is quite a strong resistance level currently. Right, and the first horizontal resistance, right? So that this was what I mentioned, the same as what I mentioned last week at 39,100 to 39,200, right? So it cleared on 4th of May, right? Because it cleared this horizontal resistance and hit that downtrend line, right? But as what I mentioned, it resisted by this downtrend line and corrected back down, right? So ever since then, it's trading below this first horizontal resistance level. Right, and other level of resistance, right, because there actually wasn't any upside, right? We didn't clear that first horizontal resistance nor the downtrend line, right? So we didn't actually, prices didn't actually hit this other resistance level, right? Right, and the daily MACD, right, you can see the whole week, right, it was continued to be slightly negative, right? And one thing that we did notice, right, is that the gap, right, is slightly increasing by the end of the week, right? Possibly caused by all these red candles, right, at the end of the week, right? So this is, quite a bit of concern, right? If this continues, the gap continues to widen and continue to be more negative, right, we could be seeing a further breakdown in Bitcoin, right? So we do have to watch out and see what happens, right? This was the suggested trading plan last week, right? Where we mentioned, that were opportunities, to either long or short Bitcoin, right? If you are a trader, right? So by long, I mean, you buy at a low price and you sell at a high price. And for short, it basically means you sell first, right? And you buy back at a lower price, right? So what I mentioned last week was that, for long entry, right, we could enter long position if the uptrend and horizontal support hold convincingly and or the MACD becomes positive, right? And if the downtrend line, the first horizontal resistance actually is broken, right, convincingly, we could add our more long position. If not, we can just take profit at this particular level, right? And if there's further upside, we can take profit at other horizontal resistance levels, right? And as for the short entry, right, we could also enter a short position, right, if the uptrend line and the horizontal support were broken convincingly, right? Or if the and or the MACD actually becomes negative, right, and take profit at the second or third horizontal support levels. Right, so let's take a look at, if we follow this plan last week, right, what would have transpired for this week. So the actual trading plan, right, so actually, we could really execute both the long and the short entries, right, if we actually followed this, my particular trading idea. Right, so for long entry, right, we could have entered, on 4th of May, right, or, sometime before that as well, right, when we saw that the uptrend line and the horizontal support was held convincingly, right. So say you entered, around 37,700, right, and you take profit, at the downtrend line, right, because it couldn't quite clear, right. So as I mentioned, if it couldn't quite clear, you can take profit at that level, right, and that actually quite a good gain, right. Actually, it was in one day, right, we actually gained 5.6%, right, in just one particular day. And thereafter, right, after that, on the 5th of May itself as well, we could also enter a short position, right, because as what we saw just now, it was a very vague candle that broke down the uptrend line as well as the horizontal support, right, first horizontal support, and it was very convincing, right? So we could have followed that idea, right? Enter a short position and uptrend line and horizontal support are broken convincingly, right? And you can take profit at second and third horizontal support level. So that's what we can do, right? And it actually really hit second and third horizontal support, right, on the same day, right, 5th of May and 8th of May, which is today, right, at these two particular levels, right? So that is a 1.6% gain in one day, and if we held until Sunday, right, for a second take profit price, right, it was a cool 7.8%, right? So could earn for both ways, right, both on the long side as well as the short side, right? Yeah, and that's the quick recap of last week, right? But as always, right, we were also interested of what's the future, right? What is the future for Bitcoin? And once again, right, I'll pause here for a moment, right? If you're finding value in this video so far, right, do tap on that like or love button, right? So that I know that you are enjoying my sharing so far. All right, and let's delve in the details, right, for Bitcoin on the future analysis. Right, so this is the daily chart for Bitcoin, and we have that first horizontal support, right, as I mentioned just now. Right, so we do have to watch out for this key level. It is currently testing this horizontal support now, right? So we do have to watch out to see whether this will actually break down, right? If it breaks down, right, we could be seeing another support level, right? If not, if it's strongly supported, there could be a bounce back up, right? Possibly to the downtrend line. Right, and if the first horizontal support actually breaks down, we could be looking at lower support levels, right? This is something new, right? Because it has fallen since last week, right? So these are new support levels to watch out for further downside, right? So I've identified the second horizontal support to be about 32,800 to 33,000. Right? So this was the previous low around this time here. The third horizontal support, right, is somewhere a bit lower, 31,100 to 31,300, right? So it used to be the support down here, right, some time ago. Right, so convincing breakdown of the first horizontal support, right, might see the price retesting this lower levels, right? So we do have to watch out if the price breaks below that first horizontal support. Right, but on the flip side of things, right, if it does turn up, right, if Bitcoin turns bullish, right, we could be looking at resistance levels, right? So first horizontal resistance, right, would be the previous support, right, which is about 36,400 to 36,700, right? This was the previous support last time, right? As the next resistance is also the previous support, like 37,300 to 37,600, right? These are two immediate resistance levels to watch out for, right? If the price makes a bounce back up, and if it convincingly breaks up from this level and even breaks past the downtrend line, then we could be seeing a new uptrend, right, for this for Bitcoin, right? If not, right, it might just bounce back down from these levels. Downtrend line, right? So downtrend line is what I mentioned, right? It was resisted on 4th or 5th and May, right? These 2 periods when the Fed increased the interest rate, right? Eventually fell back down. So it seems like a strong resistance now. We do have to see that it eventually breaks, right, for price to make a higher high and form a new uptrend, right? If not, this will just continue to remain the strong resistance level for price to bounce back down. Daily MACD, right? As what I mentioned, right, it is slightly negative, right? And it is quite negative, right, at the end of the week, right? So if this persists, more bearish momentum will continue, right? If not, and the gaps closes out, and eventually cross over the positive region, right? We could see a reversal and could see a bounce of prices back up. So here's my trading plan, right? At the moment, I like to point out that this is my own opinion, right? Do your own due diligence, especially in this time of market volatility, right? So for my trading plan, right, being a trader, right, I have suggested both long and short entries, right, for Bitcoin, right? So if for the long position, right, if the first horizontal support holds convincingly, right, there is this first horizontal support, right, and or the MACD actually becomes positive, right, we could enter a long position, right. And if you get further confirmation, right, from the downtrend line or the horizontal resistance level, right, being broken convincingly, right, we could add long position, right. But if they are not broken and they are resisted, right, then we should take profit at this level. Right, and for short entry, right, if the first horizontal support is broken convincingly, right, or the MACD becomes negative, right, we could enter a short position and take profit at the lower 2 levels, right, that are drawn out just now, right. So this is something for us to take note of, right, and let's see how it will pan out next week. Right, and that's a quick analysis, right, for Bitcoin, right. I hope all you have gleaned something, right, useful for my analysis, right. And if you have found value, right, in my sharing so far, right, if you enjoyed my sharing so far, right, once again, right, do give this video a like or a love, right, so that I know that you have found value and this is beneficial to all of you. Right. Before I end off, right, just a few reminders, right. First of all, like to advertise this guide once again, right, my 7 steps guide on how to weather market volatility, right. So I've actually shown this in the past few videos, but I think it's important to share this with all of you because the market is still very volatile, right. And I thought this would be a good a good guide for all of you, right, on how to weather market volatility. So it might help you to save some money, like prevent yourself from incurring losses, right, during this period of time, right. So if you want to check it out, like you can just go on to my PayHip store. I'll paste the link after this video ends, right, so that you can just click the link and download it for free. Right, and for those of you who are joining me for the very first time, right, and haven't joined my Facebook group already, right, just a reminder that you can join my Facebook group as well, right, the handle is shown here, right, at tte.the.trade.engineer, right, and over there in my Facebook group, I'll be sharing, other resources and other instruments, right, such as stocks, futures, anything related to trading, right. But just to point out, like, please answer membership questions, right, before clicking the apply button. Right, and last but not least, right, do follow me on my social media pages if you haven't done so already. Right, I have my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok account. Right, the handles are shown here. You can follow me for any information. I do post them, any information I have regularly on these channels. Right, and once again, right, if you like my sharing for tonight, right, don't forget to click that like or love button, right, so that I know that you're enjoying this sharing so far. Right, and also leave a comment below, right, on what you think of my sharing, right, or if you have any questions whatsoever, and I shall reply to your queries, as soon as I see it, right. And also give this video a share, right, if this is beneficial to you, right, so that more people can benefit from my sharing, right. And with that, right, I hope all of you have gleaned something useful, right, for S&P 500 as well as Bitcoin, and this offer you some direction for next week, right? Yep, and with that, happy Mother's Day, right? For those of you who are still celebrating Mother's Day, right? And have a good trading week ahead, right? Hope all you can earn some money for next week, and see you guys next Sunday at the same time, 9:30 p.m. See you guys, and good night.